That's probably the closest thing that you're a master at.
Yeah, to everything. That's probably the thing. They called me. They're like, we have a box that stinks and is dripping. I mean, to do a professional bear skinning video for Meat Eater. It had a lot of requests. We get a lot of requests every year, like, how do you skin your bear?
Okay. Mr. Right. John Hayes.
It's nice to be here, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. So for those that don't know, this is John Hayes of Hayes Taxidermy out of Libby, Montana. That is correct.
That is correct. Okay. For better or worse.
For better or worse. Good. Really nice to meet you. You know, I think we actually DM'd a little bit even before this most recent time, and then we just never got connected. And this most recent time, I just remembered, saw you, reached back out, and here we are. So
right, like I thought it was actually not you.
Yeah. No.
Like,
it is me. It was me. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh. Super cool. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. We were just talking about kind of your story a little bit. So I do want to start there for like our people who maybe don't know your story, don't know where you come from, what even you do. Kind of walk us through, you know, you're in taxidermy, been doing it for a long time. Talk to us a little bit about origin, how you got into it, and kind of where you're at now. So give us the history, however detailed you want to go.
Right. Yeah. Like fall asleep listening detailed?
No, kind of like halfway. Yeah.
Okay.
Halfway.
I started out in taxidermy just because my father and all of his brothers were avid hunters. And every now and again, they'd get something that they'd take to a taxidermy shop. And so I got to go pick up a deer head with my dad when I was about 8 years old. And we walked in there, and it was the most amazing place I'd ever been. I was just blown away with all the mountains.
Locally in Libby?
Yep.
That's so cool.
Actually, Al just retired.
The guy who did it?
Yeah. He ran a full career out of there. I bet he did 40-some years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went in there, and he had all sorts of different mounts, you know, a lot of North American stuff. He had a pet wolf there. You know, like, it was just mind-blowing for an 8-year-old to go in and see all that stuff.
Wow.
So we got the deer head, and we're walking out and told my dad, I was like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a taxidermist. And he was like, all right, cool. You know?
That is really cool.
Then so I started kind of farting around with some, like, trying to mount a squirrel and stuff like that, you know, on my own. And when I got old enough to get a driver's license, I finally just started going around trying to find a shop that would hire me out and let me in there. I got into one when I was about 15.
They actually brought you on?
Yep. Well, like, not in any taxidermist capacity.
Sure. Just whatever you can get your hands on.
Bitch capacity.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which is normal.
Sweeping the floor, salting, hauling stuff to the dump, and stuff like that.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Yep. That was how I got into it.
That's really cool.
And then did it through high school. Got out of it right after high school. The guy that I was working for ended up going to prison for selling stolen fully automatic weapons on the side.
Wow.
Yeah, so we.
I like how you just kind of casually slid that in. Yeah.
Yeah. So when ATF and the FBI hauled him to prison, my job went away with him. So then I ended up going up to Alaska. I thought I'd go up to Alaska and, you know, I don't know, like homestead, live off land, something like that. And I spent about 3 months up there in a fishing lodge and realized I'm definitely a Montanan and not an Alaskan.
Where in Alaska?
I went up to Good News Bay.
Okay.
And then we flew into Good News Bay, and then it was 36 miles up the Good News River on a jet boat, and that's where our camp was.
Wow.
Amazing fishing, but, you know, growing up in Montana, like, you can drive for 12, 13 hours and never leave the state, and you can go anywhere you want. So then being that isolated, I was just like, wow, I'm never really going to be able to go anywhere. So after that, I came back to Montana. And at that time in Libby, you know, if you wanted work, you could always go logging or mining. So I ended up getting up with some guys and ended up becoming a hooker on a helicopter logging crew.
Yeah.
So then we traveled around Montana and Idaho, Washington, Oregon.
How long did you do that for?
I logged for about 3.5 years.
And you had the Vibergs then and the Corks and all that stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I'm not worried about saying other brands. Don't worry. It's okay.
I still, regardless of brand, I don't know how comfortable a pair of cork boots could possibly be.
You know, good question. These days, it's kind of like we don't see as many of the corked boots as even we did even 5 years ago.
Right.
When I was, you know, just a kid and we were just getting started, we would actually do quite a few of them because it was, you know, small shop and very localized.
For logging.
And there's a higher demand for logging. Yeah.
And there was more manual labor positions too.
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
sawyers aren't as prolific because they mechanically harvest a lot of timber. Hookers aren't as prolific because they mechanically transport most of the timber. So it's definitely,
it's kind of dwindled.
Less of a demand.
Yeah. We still do a lot of boots, I would say, for loggers, but just this kind of niche of the corks ones, and yeah. And then there's like even more old school stuff, drive cork, screw in cork, redwood corks, ceramic.
Tungsten carbide.
Yeah, exactly. Tungsten carbide, all this stuff. And you don't really even find guys anymore unless they're, let's just say, getting out of it or out of it already that actually know what that stuff is or those terms. Unless it's this niche, young guy community, which I don't know, there's probably a few hundred of them left, that are still doing it. So that's pretty cool that you had that experience doing that. That's like unique.
Yeah, it was the tail end of it for sure.
Yeah. What years were that?
That would have been 96 through 99.
What outfit were you working for?
Several.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I did some conventional logging in Libby, mostly for Decker logging. And then I worked for like Horizon helicopters, Skyline helicopters, Evergreen helicopters, Grimm helicopters, Northwest helicopters.
So like literally a helicopter come down, pick up logs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's so crazy.
Yep. And I was on the hooking crew, so we went out and set all the chokers, and they lower the hook down. And
I've heard that. I've been on a helicopter, but I've heard like when you're doing like work on a helicopter, it's like the closest thing to like some kind of flying type of experience because it's so up, down, unique. Is it like that? Yeah.
So when it first started, you could always tell if you were new or the guy had been there for a while. Because when you first got there, everybody wanted to ride on the helicopter. Then after time went by and you saw crashes and stuff, you're like, no, I'll walk.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, I always definitely enjoyed riding on the helicopter.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
It was my favorite way to fly for sure, I'd say.
So after that, how'd you get back into taxidermy?
Well, after helicopter logging was done, I ended up taking a job at a mill in town that was still operational. And like my grandfather worked there, my father worked there, my uncles worked there. And so it was kind of next logical step, I guess, for me at that point.
Generational.
Yeah. Everybody served their time at the mill.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to work at the mill and worked there about 2 years, and then the mill closed. But in that 2-year time, I had met my wife. She had come up to visit her grandparents, and she was in town she was just coming for a visit, and then realized that she was going to have to stay on a little longer and help her grandpa get some stuff taken care of with her grandmother. And so she got a job at the mill just to make some money because she was getting ready to head to Mexico again. She'd been living in Mexico for about 3 years at that point. Wow. As she sailed from San Diego on her aunt and uncle's sailboat down to Mexico and lived there about 3 years. And then she went from Mexico to Hawaii and lived in Hawaii for about a year. And then she went from Hawaii to Australia and lived there for about a year with her family, then came back up to Libby.
All before meeting you.
Yeah.
That is very special. You guys are both special, come from special stuff. That's so interesting.
She's very adventurous. Yeah, she traveled a lot. I basically just stayed in the Northwest. I didn't get out much.
So crazy.
But yeah, we met at the mill, and that was 2001.
Was she working at the mill?
She just got a quick job there to get some money banked up so she could buy a truck and drive down to Mexico was her plan.
That's so cool. And that didn't work out. We
met.
Yeah.
And then when the mill shut down, she ended up, we were seeing each other for a while at that point, and she decided she was going to go into nursing school. So then she went to nursing school, and then I was going to go get into law enforcement. So I went to college for criminal justice. So I did 2 years in criminal justice, and then I had an opportunity to get hired back at a real shop and as a taxidermist, so I could actually become a taxidermist.
Straight up,
yeah. And so I only needed 3 credits or something like that to have my degree finished up in criminal justice. And when Dennis offered me the job, I was like, I'm out. And so I just packed up my stuff and headed down and went to work for him. And
so true kind of passion.
Oh yeah, it was all I ever wanted to do. But after my first job, left town, it was hard to get much of an opportunity into a real shop, and then at that time there was 14 different taxidermists in the Libby area, like Libby, Troy, Trout Creek and stuff, in a very small area. And to start out on your own, the pie was already sliced so many times. It was going to be damn near impossible at that point, especially with no skill. So took a few years, finally made my way back to it. And then I apprenticed with Dennis for about 5 years. And then I took over the business about 15 years ago. And I've been on my own.
Is Dennis not working anymore? Retired? Gone?
He retired.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. How was the apprenticeship? How was that experience?
Excellent. Dennis was always very encouraging. Definitely gave me a lot of confidence. I might have had a little too much confidence in the beginning, but it worked, you know.
Yeah,
like wasn't afraid to try.
That's super cool.
So just take on a new project, new task, try new things, which that's still some of my favorite stuff. Try something new.
Yeah.
Something more bigger, better, more elaborate, more in depth, more detailed. That's still my favorite thing to do.
Because I would say it's pretty craftsmanship, crafty.
It can be as good a craftsman or as poor a craftsman as you want.
Yeah. There's a lot there. I'm sure there's a lot of these tribal kind of like nuances that you probably can't go read a book about taxidermy or like a manual or something.
There's, there are some schools, and I've hired a few people that had completed a taxidermy school. They're usually like 6-8 weeks. And I don't expect them to actually know how to do anything, but it shows that they were motivated enough to actually attend.
Get into it,
the school. Yeah. So that's kind of how I always gauged it. But
is it kind of like this is a trade that is very like passed down, and it's kind of like only like if you're in the know and you apprentice under somebody, do you actually kind of learn the ins and outs?
That's your best way to excel fast.
Yeah.
To trial and error it forever without anybody helping you and giving you knowledge, that'd be brutal.
So why Libby? What's the concentration in Libby? Why is there so many?
It's an anomaly, really. Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful area, and hunting was always good. And I think everybody just moved there because they enjoyed the hunting and the outdoors that Libby offered. And a lot of them happened to be taxidermists.
broke off, or just were doing it. And
and it's like top tier artists. Like one of them is still ranked very high in the world. He's taken world.
That's amazing.
There's actually 2 guys in town that have taken world.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. How many taxidermists now in Libby?
There are 3 full-time shops now.
Wow. So it's dwindled quite a bit.
Yes. Well, with the mill shutting, the mining shutting down,
we talked about
the local workload has diminished. So a lot of the guys that relied exclusively on the local business, that is just wasn't enough to go around.
Wow.
So all of us that are still in it, most of our work is not local work.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Do you still even have any local work?
Yeah, we get a bit, but I'd say probably 80% of our business is not local.
How far out are we talking here?
Pretty much every state.
Wow.
I bet I have work for at least 40 states for different clients in my shop.
Any probably I've heard you talk to. I watched the Ranella video with the bear, you did the bear. So what is the most like common animals you see?
Bears are a really common one at my shop. I've got some recognition for the bear work, and we definitely see a lot of bears. We see a lot of everything. We get African work, we got Marco Polos coming in. We got stuff from all over the place, but we do get a lot of bears. That's one of the things we're sought out for. I would say.
Kind of specialty thing.
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be a specialty thing, but it's definitely one.
Does every shop kind of have its little niche thing, or not really that way?
I think if you're in it long enough, everybody ends up being more known for something than others.
Are you guys starting to kind of become known for the bear work?
We were, that was the first thing we were known for, and now we're becoming known for some of our other stuff too.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's diversified our workload a little bit.
For us, that's actually a good point, because like for us, in the beginning, I would say that we were very known for, we actually were just talking about this as we're walking the floor, like this crazy custom stuff, and that's a big part of the, doing boots, and people come to you with needs. But then it's kind of like, you want to be known for, like, we love firefighters is huge. That's always been a core customer for us,
right.
And we want to get deeper with that community. And so it's kind of like, I want to focus on this insatiable need, this like firefighter logging, these like essential workers, crazy extreme jobs. So like, you're diving into that. And similar experience, we started out kind of being known for one thing, and then you get into this community, like fire is an example, and then it just kind of starts growing in that community. You start doing more, and then you find like, oh wow, you've become kind of like a important product for this, category of guys or category of workers. So probably something similar for you guys, where you start out with one thing, but now you're kind of you're popping up with other stuff.
Yeah, now it's not like the hunter shoots a bear and we get the bear, then he goes and shoots a sheep or a goat and they go somewhere else. Now we're getting to where we can take care of all of their needs.
That's huge. That's really huge.
Getting into doing some more of the trophy room work and some mountain scenes now. We got a couple mountains coming up this year. And
that's really cool. What is like the craziest thing? Weirdest, craziest, most unique thing?
Honestly, I don't even know. Like, we do so many different projects. Like, I don't even like crazy. I don't know what constitute as crazy. Like elaborate, or maybe
like a very rare animal. Is there something that's very, very unique, very rare?
Rare. I mean, like rare. Like I have getting ready to do the number 6 in the world Yukon moose, and then the number 3 is coming in right after that. Wow. So I mean, that's rare that it's that big.
Yeah.
We've got 3 leopards to do right now. Which back when I was a kid, getting to even touch a leopard hide would have been amazing. And now we finally got it to where we get to work on leopards. We do the buffalo. We do the, all the stuff.
Different process for each animal?
Yes. Similar, but different. A lot of the African stuff.
That's okay.
You have a lot more skin management issues you have to deal with, which when we first started, it would have been a train wreck to do African work. It would have been very amateur looking at best. And through experience and then having some good teachers that actually took time and gave us some knowledge on how to manage that skin and what's going on under the skin on the form before you put the skin on. That's another huge part. Like, I think there's still a lot of people that think you just buy a form and stretch the hide over it and ta-da. Yeah. And I mean, technically speaking, you could do that, but that's when somebody that doesn't necessarily know good taxidermy from bad taxidermy, if you stuck 2 deer heads on the wall and one was like world-classly done and one was the most amateurish attempt at a deer head, they can tell the difference. They may not be able to give you like a detailed critique of what is anatomically incorrect with the mount, but they could tell you that one looks terrible and that one I really like. And I think getting to that level is kind of the goal. Like, you want all of your stuff to look probably arguably better in taxidermy than it did when it was alive.
Wow. Interesting perspective.
Yeah. Like, free of any dirt, any
because that's kind of the point why you get a taxidermy is because you want it to look, be a trophy. You want it to stand out.
If it was filthy and covered in shit, you don't want it to look just like that on the wall.
You're not going to hang that up on the wall. Yeah. Wow.
But then also, if it has a unique blemish, like a really unique gloved ear, like a big split in an ear, or if it was blind in one eye, being able to capture that and put that back into the mount so it's as close to.
So do you have people ask for, hey, can you keep this detail?
Oh yeah.
And then you try to follow that as best you can. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's say someone kills an animal and, like you said, hit the eye, blinded in one eye. You're able to replicate that as close as you can.
So traditionally, if they had destroyed the eye, I wouldn't encourage glamorizing that. If the deer had lost its eye fighting 2 years ago and it was just the blind cataract
scar
eye, then it was like that before you harvested it. And that is part of its uniqueness. Like a gunshot wound or something like that.
Not going to glorify that.
Try to keep it as clean and classy as possible.
That's so cool. So these guys, harvest the animal and then they send it to you how? So like, does it have to be delivered to you in a particular way?
Yes. It's perishable, right?
Yeah.
So from the time its heart stops beating, it's on its way out. Like, time is essential. Couple of things that you can do to buy yourself some time so it still has fur on it when we receive it is you can freeze it. We receive a lot of stuff frozen. Traditionally, like in Libby, we're fairly remote. So our standard shipping is you ship it FedEx, second day air, frozen, and you try to ship it only on a Monday, Tuesday at the latest, and you would want to talk to us before you shipped it on a Tuesday, just seeing how the trucks are doing and how the air is coming in and out of the community. So we receive a lot, like Alaska, almost everything comes in frozen. Guys will go on certain hunts, like African stuff. That stuff's all been fleshed and salted and dried, so it's stable. So like we had some stuff right after COVID that ended up sitting in Africa for 2 years before it ever even left Africa.
And how was that?
Perfectly fine. If it's salted and put up properly, and the only thing that can really, like if it got moisture on it, then that would allow the bacterial growth to start again while it was moist, and then you could have problems. Or if like insects or mice or something like that get in where they can chew the fur off. But other than that, like in a safe environment, not in direct sunlight, not getting moist, not having exposure to bugs and insects, it should be able to sit up there for 15 years.
So skinning the animal right away after you harvest it, skinning the animal right away, and just freezing as best you can and getting it to you.
That's your best bet. And like the bears, we get a lot of bears sent in. Cats, predators, that's a lot of things that are commonly harvested that we get mailed to us. Skin it out basically just to get the torso out of it. Like you don't have to take the feet out. You don't have to take the skull out. Some states you have to remove the skull to present it to Fish and Game. But if you don't have to, I always just tell everybody just leave it in there. It's another giant frozen mass that helps ensure that the rest of it stays frozen anyways, So like having the skull and a grizzly bear hide is not a bad thing.
So
when they're shipping it, it's like freezer packets, it's the same difference.
So interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And then when we receive it, we'll thaw it out in the refrigerator slowly, and then we'll run it through the process and take the skull out and the feet out and flesh the hides down and turn out the ears and the nose and the eyes and get everything ready in the salt.
That's awesome. So like for us, people ask us, I feel like people ask me this question, in terms of like boot making or shoe making, how has like technology changed it? And the answer is a lot. I mean, in a lot of ways, machinery, all this stuff. The particular way that we do stuff might not be the most technologically advanced because we're shooting for a particular end product, but always looking for better machinery, always looking for all that type of stuff. How about in this world? How would somebody who's doing taxidermy 100 years ago do it different or the same?
It's so different. Polyurethane foam. I mean, that is one of the hugest advancements in taxidermy ever. I mean, that really brought it from
what is that?
You used to have you lay up like rosin paper forms, use wood to end part of the skull. Like if you did a traditional shoulder mount, 100 years ago, it would have the bulk of the animal's skull in it. And then if you ever saw an old mount, usually they were like, we would call it an upright now, like pretty straight up, pretty erect. And that's usually because you had a board and you would notch out the bottom of the skull and inlay a 2x4 into it
to keep it up. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then that's where you could start building up your paper form to give it the proper diameter for the neck, for the hide to fit around. And then you would have boards up the back because plywood didn't even exist at that point, right?
Wow.
So now you actually have one solid piece of foam, and it'll have a plywood back on it that you can use to put your attachments to the wall. We mount them to the stand so we can actually do the work on the stand at that time. And then it has another piece of plywood decked into the top of the head that you can fix the top of the skull cap to with your antlers or horns, whichever.
So something as simple as foam, polyurethane foam, which is so common.
Carvable.
Yeah.
You can sculpt with it, you can cut off, and then you can buy the exact same foam and then add to for all your alterations.
Yeah. Wow.
And the alteration, what you're capable of now easily compared to what you used to have to do is not even close.
Does it feel like
epoxy?
Yeah, but I was gonna say
super glues.
Yeah, I was gonna say like chemicals and stuff probably must just whatever you're using now. To safer.
Yes.
Do you probably clean the hide somehow? What do you just different various things and
like anything that's fur bearing.
Yeah.
It gets shampooed and conditioned.
There you go. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's use an actual shampoo and conditioner. And then to dry stuff out now, we use it's called a Master Blaster. That's my favorite one that I've ever used, and it's for blow drying motorcycles and cars.
And it works amazing.
Phenomenal.
That's so
you
interesting.
can go from soaking wet to completely dry on a mountain lion or a bear or goat in about an hour and a half.
Wow.
So you can keep that hair lofted up and separate, so it's not like matted together.
So would somebody doing a taxidermy project 100 years ago take twice as long, 3 times as long, or is speed not really affected?
Yeah. I remember when I first started, you were expected to mount 2 deer heads in an 8-hour shift.
Wow.
From start to finish done.
Yeah.
Like hang it on the wall and let it dry. And then you do the finish work on them in like 2 days. At my current skill set with what I want to see to put into the form, what I want to have done to the hide, how I want the expressions to be, my clay work and stuff, I can do a deer head like rough to where I can let it start drying in probably 8 to 10 hours.
So is that just because it's just your demand kind of for the quality, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Like 4-hour deer head looks like a 4-hour deer head. There's just no way around it.
Wow.
You cut a lot of corners to get that done. And then when I was first starting, I mean, like, you didn't know any better. That's what you did. So you got there and you hustled and didn't prep anything to speak of. Your clay work was minimal to non-existent. Your inner nostril details, like there was none. You just like poked a couple holes and jammed the fur in there, then smeared epoxy over it and shot a dot of pink paint on it. And you're like, well, yeah. Those very, very remedial skill sets. And then as time goes by, where you're trying to get to that next level and that next level and that next level, it slows you down.
But the quality of the product is
to make, like when we were at lunch and I was talking about one of the mounts that still haunts me very frequently is my grandfather's best whitetail. It's like the best whitetail buck anybody in the family ever got.
Yeah.
And I mounted it like
20
20 years ago. And every time I go over to my parents' house, I'm just like, oh man. Someday my mom will let me take it off the wall and tear it apart, but he's still holding on to it.
Yeah. No, it's, the thing is, you'll notice those things. And there's definitely a level of quality probably for the customer as well that's noticeable. But when you're getting past a certain threshold, I imagine that it's got to be such detailed stuff that it's really only masters are noticing.
Some of the stuff, yes, you're like, you have to point it out.
Yeah.
Look at this. And they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Otherwise, nobody would
notice it. Yeah.
But through social media, that's been amazing. Like, people have access to seeing all these different levels at any given time on their phone.
Yeah. So amazing or difficult? Because maybe people are being
I think
demanding.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful for us. I don't know about for everybody, but if you were trying to become better and better that's been phenomenal.
That's so cool.
And I can look at some of my peers, guys that have been peers for my whole career that are just decorated, amazing artists, and I can look at pictures of stuff they're doing and be like, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And I can work on one of my pieces with something
make it better.
Yeah. So it's been essential for us to move forward.
Do you feel like your work, like you feel confident that anywhere in the world you can put a piece and it's going to go toe to toe with any other taxidermist in the world?
I'm very confident in my skill set, but then there is that next level, like for championships. No, I have never competed for like world, and I'm hoping as things are moving forward, I will have more time allocated for doing something
special like that.
Yeah. That's definitely one of my.
Well, you were showing me some of the stuff at lunch. I mean, I'm not a taxidermist, but it looked like you mentioned, like it looks better taxidermied than it almost would in a real life scenario. And I mean, that's just like so amazing.
It's unlimited. Like it's limitless what you can do. Trying to stay creative, not get stuck in like, the rut of, well, this is the way I do it, so this is how I'm going to continue. Fortunately, I've never had an issue with that. I'm never happy. I don't have any taxidermy work in my house. I have a fish that a friend of mine mounted, and that is it. It would drive me insane to look at a piece that I've done every day. Like I would nitpick anything I've ever done to death.
So that's just kind of you pushing always to get better.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's probably why you're where you're at now, and that's why you'll be where you're going to be whenever you're going to be done is because of that. You just want to keep getting better.
I don't know that I'll ever produce a piece where I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
That's perfect. If I do, that's probably when I'll quit.
Yeah.
Because it's like, then what?
Yeah. What's kind of the point? I agree.
Yeah. No, the drive is half of it.
It kind of sounds like
challenge.
Like it's like art.
It's very much art.
Like you're like a sculptor.
Yep.
And like this, I'm just hearing you talk about it. It's kind of like, I wonder if this is how like an artist or a sculptor talk about a piece, and it's very similar feel.
Yeah. And like you can take it as far as you want. I mean, you can get as artsy fartsy as you want, or you can keep it as just, mechanical, part A, part B, part C done. Even like our paint schedules when I was first starting out, I used like pink, black, and brown, and that was it. Now I'll fart around and put 5 different colors layered up to just do part of a nose pad on a whitetail, but it looks really cool.
Yeah.
You're starting to get that depth in there. Your finishes that you put on top of your paints, if you put finishes on in between the paint layers, just trying to achieve that more realistic depth, more realistic moisture. Like I said, you can go as far as you want.
It's like, what's like the passion for you? Is it more in the actual, like, I'm doing specifically taxidermy, or is it more like in this, man, I just love like watching something come to life? Or like, do you kind of get what I'm asking?
It's actually still just a taxidermy for me.
Just doing the taxidermy.
Do the work. That is still my favorite.
That's special.
That's been actually one of the more challenging things the last couple of years, where I have to do other things now and the work. And you could ask anybody that works for me. I'm definitely my happiest when I can actually just do
the work.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Yeah, because we were talking about this earlier too. Is the reason it's the reason that I'm doing this, or JK exists, is because our dad was doing it, and we love our dad. And hey, this is what dad's doing. We're going to jump in with him. And it just happens to be that it's cool and we liked it, and so that's like lucky, but I didn't grow up necessarily like had that experience where it's like, oh, I'm going to go get into boots. Yeah. It was more like, okay, we love dad and we want to be around dad. Dad's doing it. Dad definitely had the, I love boots thing, but similar, it was available for him and he went after it. And then I would say Will and I developed the love for boots after we got in and like got our hands dirty. So in a way, similar, because we had to get in and like taste it, and they're like, okay, like, wow, we like this. Like, this is fun,
I don't know how your passion could possibly grow for much if you don't actually get your hands dirty.
Fully agree. Yeah.
And like, you can do your best and then look over and see that your best really isn't that great. And you're like, I want to be able to do that.
And that would happen all the time.
And then that's the grind.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen just overnight.
Yep. Exact same thing.
A lifetime.
Yep. And I remember, being 13, 14, 15, 16, learning stuff, and then my dad will do the same thing that I was doing in a quarter of the time, and it looks twice as good, and I would experience that same emotion. I'm just like, man, I actually have videos because when I was 14, 15 years old, we already had smartphones, and I remember taking a video of my dad lasting that process I was showing you out there, and I just remember I actually have a video, and in the video you can hear me as I'm taking the video going like, wow, like how does he do it? And that's that moment. That's that experience of like, okay, I want to get better. And
you're like, it looks like it's going to be so easy.
Exactly.
Because you're watching the master
who's did it for 40 years, go do it. Yeah. So probably, very similar. It's probably that way with any craft.
Anything.
Anything like that. Yeah.
Anybody that's put in a lot of time doing something and, trying to do well at it, no matter what it is. I mean, I remember going to the mill and watching guys pull veneer off the chain. Like the individual layers that make up a sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
It's like just over 4 feet and just over 8 feet, 1/10 of an inch thick, very brittle, and they're coming by fast, and they would grate it, and then you just pull it off into a cart. And I got there that first day, and they're just, flipping them around over their heads and everything. Then it was my turn to step in there, and it just, a wad of shit starts building up on me, and I'm breaking all the sheets, and it was just like, oh, that's not as easy as I thought.
Not as easy as I thought.
I think, like I said, I think that's the same with anything. Watching somebody good at anything is impressive.
Yeah. So how many years do you have under your belt now doing taxidermy?
Be 24.
24 years. It's a considerable chunk of time. Where do you
more
think,
time than not now?
More time than not at this point, yeah. Do you think, we talked about this earlier, but I feel like I want to ask more, like, I don't know that, I wonder, I would actually like to know this, and I don't know if it's something we could even pull up, but like it seems that hunting as a whole is more popular now than it was before. I don't even know, we don't really know if that's true. It could just be because social media is bigger.
Has brought it out.
Yeah, has brought it out. But it could have been, exactly. It could have, it was not hidden. People have been hunting forever, right? So it could have been that there was actually more people hunting before, but now because of social media has been brought out, or maybe there's actually more people hunting now because of social media.
I would say there's definitely a correlation there too.
Probably, yeah. So where I was going with that is like, are you seeing that on your end?
Yeah.
Where there's this kind of more of this is going on. We got more demand.
More people that are there for their first piece.
Wow.
Like I just gave a guy his first piece of taxidermy work yesterday.
What's that?
It was the bear that I skinned in the skinning video with
Ranella. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first thing he'd ever had done, and he's just amazed. He's like, it looks so clean and pretty. I was like, yeah. So he was ecstatic, and yeah, like we have a whole bunch of people that their first mount ever, their first rugs, their first game heads, their first everything,
and they're on fire about this.
Yeah,
and they're gonna probably go do it again.
And it's like early on, it was all middle-aged guys, and they're in there every year with their deer, or their elk, or their bear, or whatever. And now you're seeing a lot more young people that are.
What do you think that means? What do you think that means?
I think what I take away from that is like the most important part is that generation, your generation, right behind me, will continue on in the sport. The sport will stay alive.
That's cool,
and the industry will stay alive.
That is a big deal.
Yeah. Because for a while there, it was kind of looking like when all the old guys died, we were going to be out of work.
Yeah.
But now it's not as much trophy driven. Like I think Vinny's working on like a forked horn whitetail today as a mount, and it's the first mount. They're excited, and it's not because it's a Boone and Crockett whitetail.
Yeah.
It's because that was the first time that they actually went out hunting by themselves, were successful, and it was primarily a field to table hunt.
That is really cool.
And the field to table movement, I think, has been phenomenal. Trophy hunting, I mean, I've trophy hunted, like I still do for certain things, but it had such a negative tone to it. Like, there was like a misconception, just talking to people over the years, there's been a misconception that if you were a trophy hunter, you were like a bad guy. You were out there just shooting this one poor innocent giant animal and cutting its head off, and that's it.
Yeah.
Where trophy hunting, like when I think of a trophy hunter, I know a lot of guys they're very selective. They could have harvested a ton of stuff, but they're looking for one that's special to them. And then when they are fortunate enough to be successful and find that one animal, they still consume the whole animal.
Yeah.
It's not like they're just out there, poaching, or it's wanton waste. Things are going, to waste. It's not at all. So I think social media has also shed a little more light on that. Like trophy hunting in that capacity is, I find it very condonable, very acceptable.
Yeah.
But that's harder to do when you first start out. And a lot of those guys that are diehard trophy hunters, they've already harvested a lot of animals, had a lot of success. Doing field to table. Yes, they've done a lot of that. Now they're just becoming more selective, is what it is to me. It's just becoming more selective.
What is your that's very good that you shared that. I really like that. That's very educational. So what is your view then, or like your perspective just on the field? I like that term, field to table movement. And like, what's your personal belief? Should that be something that is wider, grander, larger, and encouraged?
It should be very much encouraged. It is amazing to be able to go out and harvest an animal and process the animal and cook with it. And there's been some phenomenal cookbooks put out. It doesn't just have to be, fried venison. Yeah. Like there's amazing. Ranella's got a bunch of cookbooks. There's a whole bunch of cookbooks out. If you look up wild game cooking, there's waterfowl specific, upland bird specific, small game, big game. Like it's amazing what you can do with it. And you can actually go out yourself and get it and bring it home to your family. I think it's great.
That's special.
Hunting with your family. Like my wife and my daughter and I go out every year, and sometimes we do well, sometimes we don't do so well, but we all get out and we have fun. A lot of bird hunting, elk hunting, go fishing, and it's wonderful to get to bring it home and actually consume it.
Yeah. And it's you get it. Yeah, it is special. Yeah.
And it's wild, organic.
Yeah.
It is as fresh and clean of animal as you could possibly get.
How does your perspective on just, I don't want to use the word like nature, but like, how does your perspective on just the environment, the planet, nature change after doing that?
So I grew up in it, right?
Yeah.
Like from the time I was being held as a baby, my mom would walk out to my dad when him and his partners would come home and they'd have elk in the truck. So I was always,
it was so normal.
Yes. Yeah. But getting to meet people, even my wife never really hunted until we got together. So she never did a lot of like backcountry hiking, camping, stuff like that. So after we got together and started hunting together and going out hiking into lakes, fishing and stuff like that, it's been amazing to watch her growth in the outdoor sports. My wife is way more hardcore than I am. I mean, she'll just go, I think tomorrow she's going on, it's probably like an 18-mile hike.
Wow.
To go look at a peak.
Who is this woman? Go look at a big
sailboats,
hiking.
And I'm like,
wow.
There's no fishing up there. I don't want to go. There's nothing to hunt. So I would say she is more appreciative of just the landscape and everything out there than I am. I'm still a little purpose driven. Like I love to hike and
go hunt. Yeah.
Hiking to go fishing.
Yeah.
Just the sightseeing I get bored.
You live around mountains. You've seen enough. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. So it feels like probably for a person who didn't grow up in it, they get into it. There's probably a lot more appreciation and respect.
Very much so.
That is cultivated because you've done the field to table and you see the process.
And more of an appreciation for like being careful out there. Things that can go wrong, that do go wrong, just being more prepared out there instead of just wandering out in there thinking everything will be fine. It's always fine. It should be fine again. And then, the hunting, usually you have to, you should have X amount of equipment with you for the hunt, whether it's, overnights or backcountry or being able to process and carry out the meats, whatever. You should have, start a fire, stay warm, food, shelter, all that stuff, because you can end up having to stay out longer than you intended when you're hunting.
Yeah.
And so then her and my daughter and stuff, they go out and do that stuff. They're always quite prepared, which has been good to see. They're not like just hoping everything goes good.
Yeah.
They're always hoping it does, but they're prepared if it doesn't.
You must be proud of that.
Very proud.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Because they go out a lot without me.
Yeah. And they're successful.
Yeah.
So overall, overarching feeling feels like hunting is on the rise. Mm-hmm. And there's more young people getting into it than probably ever before. And it probably has a lot to do with social media, but just in general, there's more younger people getting in.
And younger people that didn't come from families that hunted.
That's special.
New to the
First timers.
First timers. Yeah. First people in their family. That first generation to take the jump into it.
Yeah. I actually believe that's going to have a lot of good effects because I think you're going to have a whole generation of guys and gals who do have a larger appreciation for the outdoors because they're out there doing it. It's kind of like my experience for that was with wildland firefighters. When I was a kid, we didn't really have fires around here as much, but then it started to get worse over the last, let's say 10 years. Yep. I didn't even really know what a wildland firefighter was until we started having fires close to home. And this is before JK boots. This is, 5, 6, 7 years old, running around. And you don't really know until you are in it or experience it. Yeah, and you have to have some kind of appreciation for it. And to this day, I'm sure a lot of people, if someone's a first time listener on this, I guarantee you someone's going to think, what even is a wildland firefighter, because they haven't been around that. So probably similar principle here. If you haven't, it's something you can't have an appreciation, because you can have an appreciation for someone fighting a fire, but it's just different when you are in it, when you're there or around it,
or you go and do it,
Yeah, exactly.
I see a lot more of our local kids getting into the wildland firefighting.
Really?
Yeah. There's definitely more of a movement. College students, go wildland firefighting
for the summers.
Yeah.
I can't say that we've seen a dip in that. I feel like every now and then you'll always hear, I heard this like 5 years ago. I don't know if you remember, but like when drones first came out and like you kind of started getting more into robotics, there was kind of like, how AI just recently was the thing. Well, 5-6 years ago, it was drones and robots. And I remember back then, robots are going to start fighting fires, and that was 5 or 6 years ago. And that could happen one day. Who knows, But yeah, and I just remember like, that's it. Firefighters are done. And today I feel like there's a shortage of firefighters, and there's never been a greater need for them than there is right now. And so I feel like we're still so hot and heavy in this area, and supplying the demand, the need for that, the demand for that to get the boost to those guys. Yeah. So similar thing here likely is going on with hunting, that, you might have thought that it would die off, but it seems like the opposite thing is happening.
Definitely the opposite.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Gratefully.
Same. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, gratefully.
Super grateful.
I wonder what it will look like, further 5-10 years from now. Probably just likely even more, because the trend is going that way. Mm-hmm. And I think it's pretty heavy. It'll probably just stay unless there's something crazy. But
it's definitely become more socially acceptable
to hunt.
Yeah.
What makes you think that?
I don't hear as much negative connotation to hunting,
really,
as we once did. Like I said, the trophy hunting thing, even that's helped.
Yeah.
People that are on social media, some of them, people that don't hunt can still relate to them. They can actually still have a conversation and not have it just be a standoff from one side of the room to the other, and bridging those groups of people together. That definitely.
Where do you hunt around Libby, and what do you hunt for?
Libby, we hunt deer and elk and Libby whitetail mostly. There are mule deer, but mostly I hunt whitetail at home. Bear hunt in the spring. But we do a lot of our elk hunting in central Montana, in the crazy mountains.
Got it.
The numbers are better.
Just mostly focusing on elk, whitetail, bear. Yeah, that's really cool. Cool. What do you go for? Rifle, bow? What do you go for?
I just rifle hunt. Bow hunting would just be one more thing that I didn't get to do at this point in my career.
Yeah. Also, I understand it's a lot harder probably because you have to hike a lot more, right?
If you really love hunting, you should not ever become a taxidermist. Because that is your busiest time of year.
Yeah. That's a good point. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So do you ever slow down at all?
No.
Wow.
Any chance of slowing down or catching up, I think I killed that about 5 years ago.
Just because kept getting busier and
stuff shows up.
Man. That's so cool.
Every week.
That's so
cool. It used to just be like in the fall and a little in the spring.
Yeah.
Now it's like all year long showing up.
If someone wants to get something taxidermied, call you, email you, what's the way?
Both.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just say, hey, what's this? What does this cost? I got this coming in.
Yep. What's preferred shipping from where I'm at? If I'm with an outfitter, do I need to have you talk to the outfitter for range and shipping?
And then you guys can, anywhere where someone's at, you can give instructions how to do it. Yeah. So how about from somewhere crazy far away, Florida?
Basically the same thing. Because we just had some stuff shipped in from Florida. Second day air. Like I said, we're rural enough you can overnight it, but we will receive second day air the same frequency we receive overnight, and it costs
because
about
of how
50%.
rural it is. Yeah.
So just second day air.
Yeah.
And FedEx has been our most reliable.
A little more consistent. Yeah.
I hate to say we've never lost anything with FedEx because I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
So I won't say that.
What do you do when that happens?
If it's lost in shipping, there's nothing
that you can do.
Nothing you can do. You just hope it has antlers on it or horns, and you just replace the cape.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
If it's like a bear or a mountain lion or something,
what are you gonna do? Yeah.
It's just gone.
Has that happened?
No.
Wow.
only thing we've ever lost is a guy. I told him to send it FedEx second day air. Luckily, it was a raccoon, and he went and saw the price of it and decided to ship it through the U.S. Postal Service.
Yikes.
And like 7-8 days later, it showed up. They called me. They're like, we have a box that stinks and is dripping.
Wow. Like, all right. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, it was a total loss. And the guy was devastated, but I was like, that's why you don't send it USPS.
Wow. Mm-hmm. maybe this is not the right question, but like, do you do the hats as well?
The what?
The hats, the like,
no.
No, you don't do any of that?
Nope. No. We don't do, no hats,
no gear,
no novelty
accessories,
stuff,
novelty
like
stuff.
No squirrels golfing.
Just straight up mounts, pieces, things like that.
I no longer do fish. I no longer do birds of any source, no upland, no waterfowl.
So just focusing on these big game pieces and mounts.
Yep.
Wow. Is that because it's your favorite to do, or it's kind of it's like a system around it already?
That's how we got to
where you're
the
at.
Birds and the fish. I enjoy doing fish, but I've never spent enough time doing fish to be what I would call a good fish artist.
Yeah.
I could get your fish on the wall, but at that point, I don't want to do that.
That's so interesting.
I've got some guys I know that are phenomenal at it, and so if somebody calls me and asks me if I could do their fish, I usually just give them their phone number.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a real passion business for you. It's not even just a business. This is just like, this is you. This is what you do.
Yeah.
This is something you go to bed and you think about it, and you wake up in the morning, you're thinking about it.
3 o'clock in the morning, be like, okay, if I do that, I could move that leg like that.
Yeah.
All right. Go back to sleep.
Yeah.
And wake up and go down there.
That's really, really cool. Where do you see it going in a year, 2 years, 5 years?
Just up, forward.
Yeah.
Like we've been on an amazing trend. Like I was saying, the stuff that I always dreamed about when I was a kid, like, oh man, if we could just get one of those to work on. Luckily, we did not get one of those back in those days. It would have been
devastating,
a travesty to the animal and the owner of it.
Yeah.
But the timing's been good now. Our skill sets are up. We have some really remarkable guys working at the shop now. One of the guys that I have was one of my earlier mentors. He was a world champion, whitetail genius guy, was just phenomenal. And he was in town, and I heard about him, and I knew who he was from, like, he had videos out and stuff like that even back then. And so I had this whitetail, and I knocked it out of the park. I mean, it was like my finest work. And I find him, and I'm like, hey, could you come up and take a look at my whitetail, and if you have any
feedback, constructive criticism, yeah.
Oh yeah. So he comes up. And he opens the door, and it's probably at least this far away.
Yeah.
He looks at it. And he's like, is that it? I was like, yeah. He's like, that sucks. I was just like, do you need to get any closer?
Yeah.
No, I can tell it sucks.
Wow.
I was like, wow. Okay. Wow. And so I asked him if he could, be more specific. And he's a judge. He's like a certified judge. He's like, if I take the time to show you, like, are you going to be receptive? Or are you going to be like, well, I like doing it like that? I was like, no, I'm totally receptive. I was like, I thought you were going to give me like a pat on the back and a gold star. I was like, I had no idea why it sucks. So we went through everything, and he'd come up every now and again and critique stuff. And he just retired from a job, and now he's one of my full-time employees.
Wow.
So
that's really nice special.
It's nice having that kind of skill set in the studio too.
So that if it's not your pair of hands, it's his pair of hands. Yeah. That's a big deal.
Yes.
It just makes your outfit that much more legit.
And efficient, quality control. Now we have 3 people that know what to look at, all looking. It's not like, oops, that one just slipped by.
Yeah. It's like, I would call it like expert knowledge maybe. Or, we have that too. We have guys that have been making boots, longer than I've been alive. And that's huge, because I feel like my dad trained me and Will really, really well. We have a lot of expert knowledge. Since I was 14, been doing this, and I was next to Dad every day for all those years. But even that, like, you always want another opinion, and it's always good to have just more expert knowledge. And I feel like it's a culmination of like all these years in one room.
It's amazing to be able to have somebody to bounce an idea off of.
Yeah,
because when you're alone, you're like,
it's kind of scary a little bit.
I think that's a good idea. And I'll run it.
Yeah.
And then you adjust.
You can get lucky, and you can be right. And you can be right.
And you get 7 out of 10 things right.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, less of that, more of that on the next project. Yeah. And that's the grind, when you're alone and you're trying and you're trying and you're trying. Now we have somebody else there and you're like, what do you think? And they're like, it's a great idea, but I would do this, or like, it's a terrible idea. And they can, and you're available for them also.
Yeah.
So it just makes things, the creativity just flows better.
Yep.
There's a lot more.
Yep. It's like safe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We were talking about this at lunch. So, I feel that where you are now in this stage is kind of like this moment where, it's such a skill thing, and it's in your head, and tribe. It's kind of like tribal. You guys are all, like you said, you're looking at this thing, and I feel like now I have this cool experience where, because we have these guys in the shop, I can when I walk through the shop, it's like, okay, I know he's there, he's looking at it. I know he's there and he's looking at it. I know that guy's there, he's looking at it. It gives you like this confidence and this safety.
You're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off trying
and I know if it's not my
everything.
pair of eyes or my hands,
but it's a
good pair of hands. Exactly. It's like, it's such a good feeling. Mm-hmm. And then that feels good because then I still, things still always come up. You're always going to you're always getting better, whatever, QC, all this stuff. But it just helps you sleep better because it's like, I'm okay with it not being my pair of hands because I trust the other pair of hands that are there. There's more elements to that, like we chatted about. You want stuff written down. You need SOPs and rules and policies and multiple QC checks, and we've done that.
Know who did what at what phase.
Like we were just talking about. I can track down who worked on what pair of boots.
You're like, I don't know, it wasn't me.
Yeah,
actually it
was. Yeah, exactly. And like you need that, and that's improvement as a whole outfit. That's how you improve the whole thing, But there's always going to be these nuanced moments where you're gonna maybe there's something that's not written down or something that's not whatever, and you want that expert. So that's really special. That's really good. Yeah,
and that is what for me is the most important thing, is that's how we get our clients better work to them.
Yeah,
not just more shit pumped out of the studio.
Yeah,
but we have higher quality products available to our clients.
Yeah, at this point, same. At this point, we're able to track, a lot of detailed stuff, what's coming out of the shop. Yep. And we have, like I said, multiple QC checks, and we have a running QC rate. I forgot the number, but there's it's a lot. It's got to be something like around the 50s, or if not even higher, of like checkpoints that we have on a pair of boots, at the different various stages. So you're talking a crazy amount of things that's being checked, and all of that is data logged. And so like we can look and we can say, okay, like, and this is kudos to the team we have now. This is not, Tim's genius. This is more actually my brother Will and the team that he works with. I'm better at this stuff. But like, it's kudos to them because it feels good to look at like your running rate of quality. And you can say, okay, like we legitimately fixing things. Like we're legitimately putting out better product today than we did even 3 months ago. And
you're not putting out fires
exactly
in between. You're actually
like
starting to
it's like getting smooth, and then okay, now let's start getting better, and that's gonna be. Is there any kind of taxidermy that's at scale, that's like large?
Like what do you mean?
Like 100 guys working in there and pumping out tons of stuff.
One of the bigger shops is Animal Artistry. They must have at least 50, 60 guys.
So that's pretty big. That's a good size.
Huge.
Yeah.
There was one in Libby that employed 48, I think, at its peak.
That's a good size. That's a good outfit. That's a big outfit. Yeah.
They were doing a lot of commercial production work. It was for Dick's Sporting Goods.
Okay, gotcha. So maybe a little more like stock items,
Yeah, semi-custom stuff. Yeah, like you could pick out.
Man, that's so
kind of what you want, and then
that's so funny hearing you talk about that. It's like so many similarities, even though it's a totally different business,
Right, but it's still
high-end craft, premium stuff, and like that's going to be interesting, journey for you guys as you grow, is going to be okay. Like, how are we going to track? How are we going to know? Like, how are we going to know that we're happy with this? We got to write it down, and we got to say we're all happy about this. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be interesting.
The part where I'm usually never really happy, I think, is part of my growth.
Yeah.
I remember the bits and pieces, but I'm never like, that's...
And I actually think that's okay.
I don't know what else I would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you could always do better.
So this guy,
no matter how good I do,
absolutely,
I screwed something up somewhere. Maybe they may never know at all, but I know. And I'm like,
this guy that works for you now, who is this certified judge, does he have a similar mindset or similar thing where it's like, hey, well, I can always get better in this area?
Oh yeah,
like, still, is he always improving too?
Always.
That's amazing. Wow,
yeah,
that's so special.
Even when he was doing a different full-time job, he would still do projects. Like he'd do them almost for nothing, just so he could keep practicing. And then he could take all the time he wanted because there was no deadline. There was no like, hey, I need that done by like 2 weeks. And so he could dabble with stuff and experiment with new resins and epoxies and paint schedules and skin loading, like developing skin loading. That's an amazing one that we never knew much about. And you start to get to do skin loading on something as simple as like a deer head. It's amazing the look. And like it goes against everything I learned when I started. So I never even would have thought of that. So like I was saying, having that outside knowledge come in.
Yep. Expert knowledge, yeah.
And now we're like, when I first started and I was trying to get an employee, like I was just like, dear God, if you can convert oxygen to carbon dioxide, I think you're qualified. Yeah. Come on over.
Oh man, that's so relatable.
Oh yeah. And you're just fighting through shitty employees. But over the last few years, we've been very lucky. It's more like tryouts now, let us know, send your application in, we'll review it, see some work, see how you've, gel with the rest of the crew. If not, sorry. Yeah. We'll continue looking.
Completely okay, completely acceptable. Mm-hmm. You need to have good culture fits, and it matters. It matters.
Yes, and we're not a huge facility. Yeah. So one person in there could be very toxic for the whole vibe. Yeah. And everybody is happy there. Yeah. Like everybody comes to work. We're all excited to work on our projects.
Your work will be better. The work your guys do will be better if they're loving where they're doing it as much as the thing that they're doing. We've seen that. I mean, I feel like it's
your guys' facility is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I got my first pair of custom leather boots or handmade leather boots 30 years ago. It was in 1994. Yeah. Right after I graduated that summer, fought fire, went to the commissary and got my boots. And I've been wearing leather boots for my whole life. Every day, unless I'm working out or something or hiking in snow. That's all I wear. Anybody that knows me knows I always wear them. So cool. And to get to come in here and see how this is laid out, it's just amazing.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's so much work. It's so much intentionality, and it's not me. I'm a part of that, but it's ultimately this team that we have, this team we've built, and that's what I was talking about. Where when you have these great people who are locking arms with you. It just feels so good. You sleep better.
Oh yeah.
And I mean the director level team we have, our foreman, our seasoned guy. At this point we have bootmakers who have been with us for like a couple years who we trained, right? So like off the street, no knowledge, we trained them. And it's such a good feeling to see that they are like progressing and getting better and then turning into experts. Yeah. The guy who's been, 3 or 4 years compared to the 30-year guy, it's a huge, gap, but it's still interesting. It's amazing to just, they're getting better and better and better. Like any business owner, anyone who's hired people, I think relates to what you talked about just now, which is you hire somebody and you just hope that they can convert carbon dioxide, oxygen to carbon. And that's sad.
On a set schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
Show up on time to do it. And they're not on their phone all day.
And so having, so having finally like good crew, it's huge. It's like a miracle. Yeah.
That is when you ask me about where I see us going the next 5 years, it'll just be more staff like that. We're finally, I'm a really slow learner, but I'm finally seeing what works, what is going to be important. And it's important for them too, especially the guys that have been with me for years. We bring on somebody new and it degrades our level of work. That could degrade our business, our inflow, and that affects their family and my family. So the guys are very involved in who comes.
Same. Yeah. Very tight about that. And there's, it's hard. Sometimes because you want to have balance and like not be cutthroat about it.
Right.
But you kind of need to be cutthroat about it, because ultimately, you got to put out good product, because when you put out good product, customers are happy, and customers will tell somebody else and come back and buy more. And it is kind of like there's grace, but it's capped for new people. And I think that is a good thing, because it keeps the outfit at a standard of excellence.
Yes.
And we're okay with training. We know that someone who's training is going to make X, Y, and Z mistakes. And we've already prepared for that. But it's even further than that. And I would say, like, in the hiring process, okay, like, we're having this conversation now, and, as long as we've known each other, you already have a certain feel from me. I have a certain feel from you. You pick that up probably very quickly when we first met.
Right.
I think it's the same thing when you're bringing people onto your crew. You just feel, you just almost like, you read it, you smell it.
Yeah. We'll call you back.
Unfortunately.
Or like,
right,
hey, that's great.
And whether it was the culture thing, or you're just kind of like, dude, this guy has never swung a hammer. Like, whichever.
So far back.
Exactly.
We don't have time for that level.
We don't have time for that level of training right now. Not that maybe you couldn't get there, but I just can't start there now.
Right now.
Exactly.
And then having the staff that also helps with the teaching of the new people. Yeah. That helps a lot too.
Yeah. Does this guy, this certified judge guy, does he train and teach?
Yeah.
That's huge, man. Wow.
Yeah.
That just ensures that your culture is going to continue to be strong. Yeah. You have a very long runway for growth. That's exciting.
Yes. Yeah. The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping us besides me.
Yeah.
And have no woe in me at all.
That's exciting.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, do anything else you want. I don't think I could think of anything else that I would rather do.
Yeah. Well, I often have those thoughts, and, my brother and I will have those conversations too. It's kind of like what vehicle or thing, like, do we know the best or feel the most, like, excited and ambitious about? And it always comes back to this that we're doing, because you just know every corner, every inch, everything in and out. And because you know it, you see what it can become.
Yeah.
And that is exciting. That's super exciting. So it's like, okay, I see everything, and seeing everything, I see what it can potentially be. And why would I want to do anything else? Because there's this is like the highest potential vehicle of anything that is in my wheelhouse, So I think that is this, like, not to get too philosophical about it, but, like, that's this, like, capitalism blessing, because the invisible hand, have you heard of that term, Adam Smith's economy, the invisible hand? So the invisible hand says that if you have a free economy, so Adam Smith wrote this book back in, like, the 1700s, talk about economics. And when you have the invisible hand of economics, where it's free industry, the better product, the better service wins, and this invisible hand picks and chooses who gets to stay and who gets to go. And really what that just means is just an analogy for the better product wins, the better service wins. And so that's why, like, it's cool, because it's free society, free industry, free labor, not free labor, but, like, freedom to labor. It just drives you consistently to always get better. So even you're pushing yourself, and the ultimate judge is your customer.
Absolutely.
And they're going to drive you to continue to be better. So it's just like the society wise, like, all of our products and offerings will get better. And the proof of that is that we're still in business. You're still around,
Still moving forward.
So you're around for 30 years. Well, that means that for the last 30 years, you've been able to continue to get better.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Like, I still would encourage someone to start into taxidermy, but if, it's my dream, well, it is my dream also.
Yeah.
But it is a commitment, and no matter what you're doing, if you want to start out in something and move your way up through the ranks, like we were talking at lunch, there's a lot of difficulties. And you just have to keep pushing forward if it's truly your dream and you really, truly want to succeed at it. You have to take all the bad with that little splash of good here and there in the early days. Yeah. And then, like, certain things, like when COVID hit, that was so hard. Like,
how long was that period of time for you guys?
Really, it was almost 2 years, because
22.
Because everything got, like, stalled out. 20, like, right before COVID hit. That was going to be our new best year ever.
Yeah.
And we got more work, and we got more cool stuff, and we just added on to the studio, and then that hit, and a lot of our work was going to be coming from out of country, the guys that had harvested stuff on safaris.
But that all got shut down.
It took 2 years to get it out of Africa. And then some of the stuff that we had got in before everything, you know, like stuff from the fall of 19 that was rolling in. We had amazing work to do, stuff that, like I was saying, always like, man, I can't wait to get to do this. And then they shut the tanneries down for social distancing. A lot of the tanneries are very, very old. So on a 12-foot bench, you might have 4 guys working on it, and they wanted 6-foot spacing. So they were like, well, we can't do it. I can't remodel the whole place. And so we had a whole batch of stuff that ended up taking 26 months for tanning.
Over 2 years.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, usually you try to get your product back to the people, 12 to 18 months, year and a half from the time they drop it off to the time it's at their house. That's usually the goal that we're shooting for. And pre-COVID, usually it was right around 12 months.
For taxidermy, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. When you brought a deer in the fall, you'd have it back on your wall before hunting season started. That was what we were.
And that is accepted normally.
Yeah, well, it used to be. Now, I mean, there's still variations, like supply companies, they lost a lot of their staffing. The tanneries lost a lot of their staffing that have not got it back. The turnaround times are getting better again. A couple of the big tanneries, we just had one tell us to, like, don't call us until it's been after 14 months.
Wow.
And they have to do certain items for us. They do the best job on certain things. And it's like, you just have to be very transparent now. It used to be like, it'd be like, 9 months to a year. And now it's like, I'm not 100% sure. It could be a year and a half, 2 years. If it's at the tannery for 14 months, usually you bring it in and we process it immediately and then store it until we get a batch. Like if we're going to send stuff off to a tannery,
that's crazy.
Send a batch
so
off.
Long.
So we could have it in our possession for 2 months while we're accumulating the rest of those items to go off to that tannery. So you're not just sending one piece off at a time, one piece off at a time.
Yeah.
So then take that time and then their time and then the shipping time and then trying to order certain supplies. That's getting better again, but sometimes they're not keeping everything in stock. So you'll order something and it'll be like a custom pour. Well, they're like, it could take, 6 days, business days, or it could take, 4 weeks.
Totally unpredictable.
Totally unpredictable.
Is this because the level of taxidermy that you're doing is so high and custom, or is it just because this is all taxidermy?
The tanneries, that's just across the boards. Wow. That's for everybody from the guy that's doing 2 deer heads a year to the biggest shops in the world. I mean, like in the United States, I should say, at least, where they're using all of our facilities.
What are some of the really known tanneries, big ones that you use?
The biggest one we use is Wildlife Gallery. They're out of Michigan. I use Quality out of Great Falls quite a bit.
And these ones are the ones that are out,
Quality, they're finally back. We're seeing everything within about 6 to 9 months now.
Is that what was normal before?
Like 4 to 6 months was pretty standard back in the day.
Hearing your lead times make me feel better about our lead times, because our lead times are 15 weeks at worst, 18 weeks at worst, and that is I'd want to get away from that, but it's completely different.
The trouble is, like, we want to get your stuff back to you too. Like, I know it's important. That's why you dropped it off in the first place.
Same. We want to get your order to you ASAP.
ASAP, as soon as possible, as best as possible, as soon as possible, as painless as possible. But it's gotten to where, like, they call, like, hey, like, I don't even have it back yet. Like,
there's nothing that you can do.
I can't mount anything I don't have. Yeah. And they're like, well, why don't you start your own tannery? And I'm like, the amount of hides we have, we'd have to become a commercial tannery. I'd have to have a facility as big as my entire studio and a staff as big or bigger just to tan.
Do you know how to do it? Could you do it if you wanted to?
I mean, we can tan like a deer hide and elk hide and stuff like that. We know how to do it, and we have shaving wheels and all that. But, I mean, that's all we would do is tan.
Yeah.
Like, there would be no time in a year.
It's a whole nother business.
It is. It's a totally separate industry from us.
Yeah.
So, there's just no way. So we're just kind of at the mercy.
Wow.
But like I said, it's finally starting to come around now. This spring was like, okay.
Yeah.
Things are moving again. Shipping's getting easier. supplies are becoming more available. One of my favorite eye manufacturer went under shortly after COVID, and they got purchased by another company, and they're just starting to release some of the eyes. So that's been great to see that coming back out. And good quality, gonna be available. Used to be just like called, ordered anything you wanted, and it was there within the week. Now you're like having to hunt around, call different supply companies to find like a pair of eyes for something. So this will be nice to get this back behind us. Timing will be good. Like we've worked our way through it, but as we're growing, the demand for supplies in our studio becomes more. It's nice to start seeing the tanneries flowing again and seeing all the supply companies going again. Yeah. It helps us out.
Yeah.
And our clients.
Wow, it gives a different perspective now on even seeing mounts. Just like there's so much work that went into that.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to get one put together well. Even a shitty one. I mean, it still takes quite a bit of time to.
And even like, let's say maybe not a complicated animal, deer, still a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard like, well, is it like stuffed with newspapers or like, you know what? I mean, like, oh, it was a form. Like, oh, you just pull the hide over it, and
it's not that simple.
Technically, yes,
but it's not that simple. Yeah,
you just pull it over it, but to make it look alive and realistic. No, it's a
even
lot.
from a common kill, from a common harvest to the most complicated harvest, it's equally probably as hard, you know?
Yeah, it's just more time to accomplish certain things, but it's all time consuming.
Yeah, people
even
would say
like the
that
habitats nowadays. Like we used to use like plaster and chicken wire and burlap and make every rock was like a granite boulder.
Yeah.
And then they got into, we dabbled with using some of like the blue foam board dock bolts, and you'd carve it with a chainsaw, then melt it with a torch and huff all those fumes. Wow. Miracle he didn't die. Wow. And then you'd refinish over top of that. And now it's rock panels. So you can buy a panel that's casted off of a rock wall, and then you break it up and reassemble it any shape you want. And then you can create all these different rock structures or ledges, outcroppings, anything. But that can take it can take longer to do the base than it did to do the animal now. But it looks really cool. And if you do even better, like you start getting to where they can't see where the seams are. So it looks like one continuous piece. Then you're like, well, the paint job could be better. So then you start dabbling with your paints and how you layer them up, and whether you dilute your paint with water or alcohol, or water and alcohol, and which order you put them on. Then if you let one dry, then you can like do highlights on it. And then once that's all done and you just got no seams and you're happy, then you can start doing like artificial lichen on the rocks and putting moss on the rocks. Yeah, so
there's no end.
There's no end. Like you can go as far down that rabbit hole as you want. That's one of my favorite things. That's what keeps me coming back, is like just that you can go as far as you can imagine.
So do you feel like you probably don't feel like you do the same thing every day?
No, I don't. Very seldom do I do the same thing twice in 2 days.
Yeah. Because it's just so much variation, so much.
Even if I'm working on one animal for 4 days, I'm on a different phase of it every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
We would, it's funny that you made that comment about like, can't you, isn't it just pulling it over the, whatever.
Yeah.
Similar thing on this side of the world, like where can't you just sew it? Can't you just sew it together? No. Exactly. Or, it's just a boot. Can't you just, why can't it be this way or straighter? It's like, it just doesn't work that way. And it's hard to, you got to be nice about it when you explain, but it's
politely
hard.
Educating
politely
somebody.
Educate, of course. Yeah. And it's not like most people aren't rude about it. They're genuinely asking,
Right. They're not an idiot.
Yeah. They just don't know. They're uninformed. So
you have
politely educate.
Politely educate them.
That's actually what we were talking about earlier at lunch too, was, the whole YouTube world. That's why we do so much YouTube, and I get in front of the camera so much, is because there's a lot to talk about, and people, they love learning, I feel like. And so anytime we can just be proactive about talking about, okay, this is the way that this boot performs, or this is how this leather will react, or why do we have nails in the boots? It's like, that's funny that people would ask that, because it's so common to us.
Right. And
that's a real question.
They don't have nails.
They don't have nails in there. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
They're like, why? So talk about that. Okay. Then we cut them in half, and we explain, you got all these layers of leather. So in the same way that we have all this minutia, there's probably even more minutia in this world.
It's equivalent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Certain things, there's really not a whole lot going on. Other things are very in depth. But just informing somebody when they have a simple question. Yeah. But that's also half the fun of it. If you can,
I agree. I actually
educate somebody and like satisfy their curiosity. Yeah. Honestly, like one of my favorite things, which is funny because my secretary that's been working on doing some more of our posting because I suck at it. One of my favorite things to watch with you guys is just like that peek behind the curtain where you're like, oh no shit, they're actually
he's the one filming. Yeah. Nate's
like,
the one filming.
Wow, look at that, you know. And you guys might think it's just the most mundane
because we see it every day.
Thing. Yeah. So she's like, we should start doing stuff, and I'm like, well, I don't really do anything that's really that cool.
You know? Yeah, exactly.
And so
you think that,
we did a posting of a guy pulling a mountain goat hide out of salt. Like, shook it off, hung it on a post, tapped it. And it's been like one of the most popular reels we've had. I'm like, what? That?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just that people are curious.
Yeah.
So
that's that education part. Yeah.
Right.
And we've seen a lot. Yeah, same. We've just seen a ton of success. The things that, like we walked through the shop and you noticed the smell, and I'm like, I'm already, so numb to that. It just goes right past me. Same thing, and so it's fun. Like I actually enjoy the education part. And I think that's the part of the time that we're living in with all the social media that is so cool because I don't think we had that.
No.
Anything remotely close to that.
Everything was pretty mysterious unless you had the opportunity to go in.
Yep.
Now you can peek in from the comfort of wherever you're at.
Yeah. How did it feel? You mentioned that earlier because you said that you worn, handmade boots all your life, all this stuff, and then you walk through the shop. How did it feel where you saw like a raw hide and then you think, okay, this thing turns into like a pair of boots? What's that make you feel like? Because you see things in your world where it's just, they send you a frozen thing and you turn it into this masterpiece.
This was like going to Disneyland for me. Like
that's
I said,
that's so cool.
I've always just been blown away that everybody doesn't wear them.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah.
So getting to come in here and see just like all the different stacks of leather you guys have, the different species and textures and everything. And
you really appreciate it because
And then it goes from just that stack to out the door on somebody's feet.
Yeah.
Executed well at that. I think it's an amazing process.
That's cool. Well, you owe me a tour of your shop sometime because I want to see.
Absolutely.
It too. Yeah, that's really cool.
It smells different than your shop.
I'm sure
especially
that it
depending
does.
on what time of year you show up.
I'm sure that it does. Yeah, interesting how there's all these similarities. I didn't think that we'd have so much like cross stuff, but it's
we're in the skin industry.
And crafty industry. And, sometimes I'll watch like wood shop stuff on YouTube, and it's wood, it's not leather, but I see like similar principles.
A board, to a cabinet.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I see similar principles, and I just think that's so interesting. Likely, if you took a taxidermist, a carpenter, and a bootmaker, and you shuffled them around, they could probably figure it out.
Well, I think you guys have to be about half taxidermist and
in a way,
carpenter and metal fabric. Like we do a lot of welding fabrication at our shop.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
A lot of woodworking in our shop. Like it's not just one thing. It takes all these different skill sets. That's why I got one guy that's an amazing metal fabricator, and that opened up a whole new world of possibilities for us.
That's so cool.
You can't replicate with wood and have it be streamlined.
Yeah.
Like a single foot attachment on something, they required a large piece of wood and a large backer plate. Now you can get it down to where it's just like stepping right off and like it's on nothing.
Yeah, like a master bootmaker probably couldn't become a master carpenter, but he might get some of the principles, and then vice versa.
Be a good carpenter and a master bootmaker.
And a good master carpenter could probably become a good bootmaker. It would just be these principles that they share in understanding the craft, attention to detail and all that stuff.
Following the steps in order as best as you can. Yeah.
That's really
cool.
Like
I enjoy doing woodworking. I'm not a
master
woodworker by any means, but
sure.
I definitely enjoy woodwork. I want to do some more resin work, epoxy resin work. I think that's a lot of fun. I wouldn't mind doing a little more sculpting. but I'm not a master at any of that. I don't know that I'm a master taxidermist either, but I really enjoy doing it.
That's probably the closest thing that you're a master at.
Yeah, to everything. That's probably the thing.
That's so funny.
But yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, you mentioned at lunch, just kind of how this has all the relationships you've made, maybe some key people that were big for you or that you've met. Tell me just a little bit about it. I'm sure anyone listening is going to be excited to hear whoever you're kind of partnered up with or friends with.
So one of the first people I met that was really key to getting to where I am now for having any sort of exposure was Clay Newcomb. I met Clay through a Canadian outfitter, Bob Morrison. He owned Bear Pro Safaris.
Very cool.
Amazing guy, like a salty old dude. He was just hilarious, very straightforward, very gruff. I'd been a career outfitter, funnier than hell. And he had an amazing bear hunting spot. Like his camp produced, still to this day, some of the most amazing, big and color-phased, beautiful black bears I've ever seen in my career.
That's his specialty, hunting bears?
That was his niche. And Bob had met Clay Newcomb, because Clay is like all about bear hunting.
We got to get him some bear slayers.
Yeah, just like if you were going to send bear boots to anybody,
send him to Clay.
Yeah. And so he was like, I know a young guy about your age that I think you guys should meet up. So he introduced Clay and me to each other. And
who's Bob?
Bob Morrison. He was the outfitter. He's passed away now.
Got it.
And this was probably, it's been at least 10 years ago now. Time starts to go by quickly. It was probably 11 years ago or so. And so he introduced Clay and I to each other. And Clay loves bear hunting, and I was known for doing a lot of bear work, so we'd kind of started off with those conversations. Natural connection. And then he ended up coming up to bear hunt in the Libby area, and we met in person and stuff. And Clay ended up, he was the owner of Bear Hunting Magazine. Now Kobe owns it, but Clay owned it at that time. And Clay, he'd owned Bear Hunting Magazine for a few years. And Steve Ranella picked up on Clay. Is an amazing guy and like genuine, like consistent, same guy every time I've ever spoken to him or met him.
Man's man.
Absolutely. I couldn't say enough good things about Clay.
Make sure your mic is closer to you. Yeah, there you go.
And so Clay ended up getting invited to go on a hunt with Steve Ranella for bear.
Wow.
And they ended up being successful and harvested a bear outside of Missoula, Montana. And Steve had to get back to Bozeman for a podcast, and he was like, I don't know what we should do with the bear. And so Clay said, I know a guy. I'll drive it to his shop. So Clay drove it all the way from Missoula to my shop, which is about 200 miles one way, and then drove all the way back to Bozeman that night, just so I could get it. And he was like, here you go, man. This is a good one for you. So he dropped it off, and we ended up doing a FaceTime call with Steve Ranella and picked out what he wanted. He wanted a closed mouth rug. Kind of talked a little bit about open mouth versus closed mouth. And I had a coyote mount in the shop. I'm calling it a coyote pillow. It's a soft mount. And get done with the conversation. Steve's like, well, I got to get to the booth. But before you leave, Clay, find out what's up with the coyote in the background. So Clay asked me about it, and I was explaining it to him. He's like, hang on, I want to video this. So he whips out his phone and takes this, 30-second video of me explaining what it is. And then he leaves. I'm like, thanks, Clay. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Takes off. He calls me like a day or day and a half later and tells me that he posted it on TikTok. I'm like, okay. And I remember saying, like, isn't TikTok just for kids?
Yeah.
He's like, no, it's for everybody. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Next day he calls me. He's like, I don't know if you're going to be happy or mad. He's like, but that thing's gone viral. I was like, is that good or bad? I had no idea. I'd never even been on TikTok at that point. And he's like, it's good. He's like, but it got over 2 million views or likes or whatever it is on TikTok in 24 hours. I was like, oh, cool. Well, on Monday morning when I got down to the shop, we had like 830 some emails. And there was just 2 of us working there at that time.
Wow.
All for those coyotes. It was like, oh my God.
Were you guys, did you make some? Did you start?
Oh, it was, we definitely, but like not all, just like, you don't buy every cowhide because they're not all great.
Right.
So yeah, trying to find.
Did what you can. Yeah.
Yep. We bought all the good ones that we had available and did all those. And then Steve ended up having us come over shortly thereafter that. And we did a podcast about taxidermy and stuff. And he had heard about me through Clay and then through John Edwards, who's the owner of Schnee's Boot Company that make all the mountaineering boots and stuff. And I've known John since, I want to say 2009 or 10. So he's been one of our long running.
They've been in Montana forever. It's like old school.
Yeah,
Montana,
old school, old school downtown.
Love it.
We're getting ready to do a small mountain in the middle of the store for those guys. That's right now. We'll have 2 different sheep on it, ibex, and so that'll be fun.
Super cool.
But yeah, so and Steve was doing some book signings down there, and then he saw a piece that we had done on grizzly bear charging off of a riverbank on some water, and he asked about it, and John said it was from my studio, and then Clay knew me, and Steve kept hearing my name pop up in these different places. So that's why he wanted us to do the bear. Then he was like, I want you to come do a podcast. So we did the podcast, and then we ended up, he called me up probably, it had to be about a year later, and wanted me to come do a video with those guys processing a bison, like an entire bison with stone tools, like flint-knapped stone tools. And they brought me on as I was like the professional for skinning.
Master knowledge.
Yeah, right, Matt. For my into my vast knowledge in this very small space. So we went out there and did that, and honestly, that was one of the most unique experiences I've ever done involving processing an animal. Like, they harvested the animal. It was a North Bridger Bison Farm, beautiful place. The guy was amazing. Got the bull, put it up on this big plateau overlooking the valley, and right up with the Bridgers in the background. And it was Cal and Clay and Steve and me doing the processing, and Spencer was there. He was like boning stuff, and it was just amazing. And we thought it was going to take us, like, I was like, well, I brought a headlamp, so does Steve. We're like, it took us 2.5 hours about, and we went from whole on carcass to completely skinned and boned out.
Wow.
It was amazing how much time we actually made doing it. One of the guys there, they were all doctors, studied like ancient North American civilizations. And one of the guys there is a master flint knapper. He can like recreate any point from any time. And so he would actually sit there and sharpen our tools for us. And then they would take pictures of them, and then so they could monitor the wear as we use them. Like before we got them, they were all numbered and labeled to what cutter had what tool. And then they measured how much wear was done on the tools.
To see what it would actually be like in real life.
And then I brought the whole bison skeleton back, and we got that all cleaned and shipped it back off. And then they were able to analyze those bones for the tool markings that we left, so they can compare those to bones they found that they think possibly were processed by Native Americans at some point. So now they have an actual fresh set. That's about as close as you're going to get, right?
That's super special.
I'm sure they had a different technique than we do, but we still were able
It's got to be similar.
We were able to scratch the bones with some rocks. But it was just an amazing experience, though.
That's really cool. So I've seen you using some Montana Knife Company knives.
Yes.
How about those guys?
So those guys are awesome. Josh is a great guy. One of my best friends, his cousin is the one that took us out when we were young and taught us how to coyote hunt. And that's still about my favorite thing in the world to hunt is coyotes. So Chad is my best friend, and his cousin is Craig. So Craig took us out all over the place. Like he would hold our little hands and, get us up to speed. So we've been coyote hunting together for about 30 years now. We travel around sometimes. We've done some coyote hunting contests together and stuff. And I got a phone call from Craig, like out of the blue. And I was actually driving down to Bozeman to be on the podcast with Steve. And he's like, oh shit. He's like, one of my other friends was just on Joe Rogan. I was like, really? Who's that? And he's like, one of the guys I worked with at Blackfoot Electric, one of the linemen, Josh. I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, yeah, you should give Josh a call. He's like, he makes knives. He's like, he makes some really cool knives.
Oh, and he was working as a lineman at that time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He's had Montana Knife Company like registered since he was a little kid.
Gotcha.
But he was working as a lineman.
Gotcha.
And doing knives like Josh Smith custom knives.
So it's like a passion thing for
him
too.
It's been a lifelong passion for Josh. Yeah, he's another one that like dyed in the wool.
Craftsman.
Yeah. That's it. Period.
It's amazing.
And he's like, you should give him a call. And so he gives me Josh's personal number. Well, Josh had taken off by this point, I was like, all right. So I get back and I was going to do a professional bear skinning video for Meat Eater. It had a lot of requests. We get a lot of requests every year. Like, how do you skin your bear? Bear hunting has taken off a lot. Like, there's more people bear hunting now than at any point I can think of in my life that I've been involved in taxidermy. Bear hunting is really, really popular right now. And, get a ton of questions. It's not like skinning most anything else. It's a large animal, and really the only thing you're retaining as far as your trophy goes is the fur.
Yeah.
So people have had some really bad experiences trying to skin, destroyed a lot of stuff. So they wanted to do an actual professional how-to skinning video. So I was like, perfect. So I called Josh up, and he has no idea who I am at all. And I call him up. And he answers his phone like, hello? Like, and like I said, he's already, Montana Knife Company by this point. Yeah. And he's like, who is this? And I was like, hi, my name's John Hayes. I was like, Craig Kelly gave me this phone number and told me to call you. And he's like, that asshole? And I'm just like, oh, wow, this has just got like super awkward.
Weird right now.
Real quick. And I was like, he's like, oh, I'm just kidding. He's like, I love Craig.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was like one of the funniest Josh moments ever, though. It was just that intro. I was just like, oh, thank God he's got a sense of humor. No wonder Craig and him hung out. And so Josh and I got to meet a few times. And then I ended up, I loved his knives.
That's cool.
So I ended up using a couple of his knives in that skinning video. And I use his knives all the time in the shop, especially for flesh and hides. Josh's fleshing knives are like, for us, I've never used a better knife. The ergonomics of it, just the cutting radius of it's great.
That's awesome. So the hype is real. It's a good
product.
Yeah.
That's and awesome. They're amazing guys. Brandon is just a stud, man.
Yeah, I've talked to him a little bit. Really, really good guy.
Yes. Yeah. He just harvested a really beautiful brown bear.
That's awesome.
We're going to be doing that for the new factory they're going to do.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that'll be one of the new.
Yeah, I like what they've got going on. I think it's special, and there's definitely a aura or ambiance to made in USA manufacturing and just doing good products, whether it's knives, boots, whatever.
If you got the chance to go into their facility, it's very much like yours.
That's cool.
Very clean. Everything's very organized.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It reminds me very much of your facility.
Maybe we need to get some MKC guys out here, and we got to go out there. I'm very open to that. That's
awesome. You would love going in there, and they would love coming out here to see this too.
Yeah. Metal. Leather, it's a good combo.
Josh was worn as a lineman and stuff. I mean, that's all.
Yeah, that's all they wear.
Leather boots. Yeah,
cool. That's good.
That'd be a good fit out here, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. That's good. Hopefully, he's a little nicer to me if I call him. So
if you can get a hold of him now, that guy is so busy now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Okay, John, I won't keep you too much longer. This was awesome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.
One more time, John Hayes, Hayes Taxidermy Studio, Libby, Montana. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, or wants to get something done, what do they do? What's the best way?
You can go to our website at hayestaxidermy.com, and you can see our email address on there and our phone numbers on there. Or you can find us on Instagram too under Hayes Taxidermy Studio.
Fantastic. Okay, sounds good. Thank you for joining. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.